Oh, this is Chuck, and welcome to the How to Defeat Dudes video blog. So I really wanted to get outside and film something in a nice kind of Japanese park type environment for you guys, but unfortunately the weather just wasn't cooperating with me today. It's really sunny, feels really nice when you go out there, but the wind is just crazy and it's all like whoosh and everything. So unfortunately that means here I am filming inside again. Hope you guys don't mind. Anyway, this video blog goes out to Mr. Stevenson63, Malay Fellas, and Tsun Tsu, all of whom had been watching various episodes of How to Defeat Dudes, and all of whom left comments asking, Chuck, how do you go about fighting people who are bigger than you? Or how do you fight bigger opponents? Okay, so fellas, this one's for you. So now what I'd like to do for this video is outline 5 different strategies for fighting people that are bigger than you, and then to just tie in a bunch of different examples and things to show you guys what I mean. Now I know you're probably sitting at home thinking, man, Chuck, how you gonna show me how to fight people that are bigger than me when you ain't even standing up? But fear not, I know what I'm doing. Strategy number 1, use distance. Now in most kinds of fighting styles and most kinds of fighting situations, distance is going to be one of the single greatest tools that you have at your disposal. In fact, if you look at a lot of the kind of old school bare knuckle martial arts, like for example, really old school karate or, the old British pugilistic boxing, they always fought from a back stance with their arms way out in front of them just so they could keep as much distance as they possibly could. Now, the reason that we've gotten away from that in modern fight sports is because in a lot of modern fight sports, we all wear these big, thick, heavy gloves. And those gloves aren't just good for impact absorption when you punch, but also impact absorption when you're getting punched as well. And also because they're much bigger, they offer much more coverage than your bare fists do. If you're wearing boxing gloves, then this kind of guard is generally fine. Or blocking like this can be fine because you've got these massive gloves, right? But if you're just doing it bare knuckle, then quite frankly, your hands are just too small. Even if they weren't too small, if you get hit really hard in the hands, then it can actually break your hands as well. So the point that I'm making is that in any kind of a street situation or whatever, you really, really don't want to block if you can help it. Just get your body out of the way, get your head out of the way, and move, and just stay as mobile as you can and keep as much distance as you possibly can. Don't ever try to block anything if you can help it. Use your distance. Strategy number 2. Kick. Now, as I've said in videos before, I myself, I'm about 6'2", 200 pounds, and I've got relatively big arms. Okay, but even so, I think probably the average 5'7" homeboy with just a regular build or whatever still has legs that are much bigger, much thicker, and much stronger than my arms, and as a function of that, could hit with more force. And then beyond that, the average person's legs would still be much longer than my arms were. So if you kick, then you have more reach than your opponent's arms. With round kicks, there are ways to get around round kicks with punches, although it isn't very easy. But if you've got a really good front kick or a really good side kick and you aim right for the hip where the center of gravity is, there's really not much that a puncher can do against that. They're brilliant. They keep people away brilliantly. In fact, why don't we take a look at a wonderful little example. Now beyond that, even if you're not that flexible and you can't actually kick like waist high or anything, then even if you could just kick to the knees, or you could just blast them to the outside of the thigh, you could just hit them right in the sweet spot, guarantee they're probably not going to want to fight that much after that. When somebody takes your legs out, it's very, very hard to do almost anything. You can't even punch well, really, because your legs are just your structure. They're what's holding you up. So if those get taken out, it's more or less fight over, generally speaking. Strategy number 3. I say this one on the How to Defeat Dudes shows all the time, but just because it's the most important thing, and that's to train, train, train. According to Malcolm Gladwell in the book The Outliers, it takes 10,000 hours of concentrated effort to truly master something. And I can tell you guys that if you put in your 10,000 hours, guaranteed fighting somebody who's a little bit bigger than you isn't going to be that much of an issue. Granted, this isn't to say that this stuff makes you invincible, and that if you're like a 100-pound woman, you could go out and challenge a 300-pound dude just because you're well trained. That's still not a very good idea. But what it will give you is it will give you a distinct advantage because you will know what you're doing and they will not. Your techniques will be clean, smooth, and efficient. Theirs will be big, sloppy, and easy to read from a mile away. Now, the best example of this that I know of is a fight that you could see on YouTube called Halmik versus Rob. Stefan Raab was a German shock jock who made this amazing proclamation that no matter how well trained a woman is, there's no way that she could ever actually beat a dude in a fight. Regina Halmik is a world boxing champion. So somebody got the great idea of just putting them in a ring together and then seeing what happens. And it's wonderfully fun to watch. Now, if you actually watch how the fight progresses, it gets to the point that Rob won't even try and attack her anymore. Because every time he does, she just reads his attack and then just punches him in the face. And she never actually hits him hard enough to knock him out. But she puts a serious hurt on the guy. And it's really, really obvious who won the fight by the end. It's really cool to watch if you get a chance. Now, another excellent example of seeing what can happen when you put a really relatively small but extremely well-trained fighter up against a much bigger but untrained fighter is if you go to Fight Japan RC's channel and you check out the fight clip, Illusions. It's brilliant if you get a chance to watch it, okay? Check it out. Beyond that, I can also give you guys an example from my own personal experience. You know, when I was living in Korea and training there, one of my sparring partners was a guy who was on the Canadian national team. And I outweighed this guy by at least 40 or 50 pounds. And I think over the 3 or 4 months that I sparred with this guy, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a week, I think I hit him twice. Once was with an axe kick. I was really, really proud of that axe kick. But other than that, like, I couldn't touch this guy. I mean, he was so much faster than I was. Simply because, one, he was very, very, very good at what he did. And then two, because he was smaller, he was lighter. So I just couldn't touch him and I could never catch him. He was so much faster than I was. Strategy number 4, stay on your feet. Now, if you come from a high school wrestling background, if you come from a judo background, if you're very, very well trained in jiu-jitsu, then by all means, use what you know. For sure. But if you don't know any of that stuff, then the last thing you want is to let somebody who's much bigger than you get a hold of you. Because in that case, you're both going to be trying to just use your muscle to win, and they're going to win because they have much more of it than you do. Beyond that, if you're up on your feet, then, you know, if the opportunity opens itself, then you can just bolt. You know what I mean? Like, screw the pride, just run, just get out of there. If you're on the ground and you're tied up and you're getting hammered, that's not the kind of situation that you want to get in. Believe me. Okay, strategy number 5. Last but absolutely not least. In fact, I'd probably even venture to say the best. Talk your way out of it. You know, even if you're really well trained, generally speaking, getting in a fight with somebody that's bigger than you is just not a good idea if you can help it. Now, in the ring, fighting people who are much bigger than you could actually be okay and might even be a great learning experience simply because in the ring there are rules. You know, and there's always safety checks in place, and if nothing else, if you're getting beaten too badly, there's always somebody to throw in a towel for you. On the street, however, none of that stuff exists. It's pretty much anything goes. You know, people's friends can jump in, found weapons can come into play, and just because they've beaten you to the point of unconsciousness on the street, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to or that they're going to stop. So as a function of all those factors, you're always, always, always better off trying to find any kind of peaceful resolution that you can instead of just knuckling up. Now, as I've said in other videos, I've gotten in lots of situations where I probably could have just beaten the guy silly, but the fact of the matter is, you know, to what end? You know, let's say even if I do win, what's to say that him and like 5 of his homeboys aren't going to come back next week and then jump me, which at least happens in the hood all the time. You know, or, you know, what's not to say that he's not going to get a gun and come back and shoot me. Or, you know, who knows, even if I beat him, you know, what if I hospitalize him and then I end up paying the guy's hospital bills or I end up in jail. So, I mean, it's just way too much of a headache. You don't want to deal with that. You don't want to have all those problems and all that. So just talk your way out of it if you can. Okay, so in summation, number 1, use distance. Don't ever block anything that you can get your body out of the way of. Keep your body as far away from as you can, and if possible, just leave, run, get out of there. Number 2, don't punch them if you can kick them. Okay? You're going to have much more power, you're going to have much more reach, you're going to have much more length if you kick instead of punching. So always, always, always use your kicks instead of your punches if you can. and if you have the room. Number 3, train, train, train. The better trained you are, the easier it will be to recognize situations, even ones that are completely novel, and figure out ways to get out of them or ways to kind of use the techniques that you have to win. If you're really well trained, you're going to know things like distancing and timing that your opponent won't. And also you're going to be able to read and recognize their punches or their attacks whenever they throw them. And you're going to be able to see them telegraphing from a mile away, and you'll know exactly what to do. This is just a little bit off topic, but believe it or not, there's 2 different visual systems within the human brain. The first of these is called the ventral stream, and within this visual system you have the subjective experience of actually seeing something, meaning that the information comes into your brain, it registers, and you're aware of it. So now the second of these is the faster one, and that's called the dorsal stream. Okay, this visual system allows you to simply shortcut past the whole experience of seeing something, quote unquote, and simply allows your body to respond to the stimuli directly. The dorsal stream is what your body uses when something is coming at you so quickly that you simply don't have time to think or make decisions. In case you're wondering, this is how tennis players or baseball players can, respond to or catch balls that are flying at them at like over 120 miles an hour.
I mean, I love our chances. It's been.
Anyway, the point that I'm making is that fighting happens extremely, extremely fast. You're dealing with events that are taking place in 1/10 of a second or sometime 100ths of a second, right? So that being the case, you simply don't have time to operate within the ventral stream. Everything has to be dorsal stream responses. And in order to do that, you have to just train it and train it and train it so that it's a natural autonomic response. There can be no thought involved. Going back to Helmick versus Rob, his punches were slow as far as punches go. But even so, they were still way less than a second, maybe 1/10 of a second or 2/10 of a second. Her responses were fast enough that she still beat him to it every single time. Those are completely dorsal kinds of responses, and that's why she could win. Number 4, stay on your feet. Again, I've already said it, so I'm not going to spend another 15 minutes reiterating it. But, if you've been trained on how to fight on the ground, then that's cool. Use what you know. If you haven't, you don't want to get tied up on the ground because if nothing else, you want to be able to break out and run if you have to. Plain and simple. And number 5, my personal favorite, talk your way out of it. So anyways, guys, that's it. At least for the moment, that's all the advice that I have to give on this subject. If you guys still have any questions, or if you feel like this didn't really answer your question, then feel free to just let me know in the comments. I always read every single comment that everybody leaves. So just go ahead, just type in a comment, and if there's something that wasn't answered or that you still felt kind of gray about, I'm more than happy to try and make another video to answer it. Okay? So thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you next time. Yosh!